You don't need a degree or investors to inject capital. You only need an idea, a little ambition, and people willing to pay for what you offer. That realization hits like a sobering slap. Because we have become accustomed to the idea that starting a business is a luxury reserved only for those with capital and connections. But in the journey I have lived and recorded here, everything unfolds at a different rhythm, simple, surprising, and so accessible you can reach out and touch it from where you stand right now. This book is about ordinary people, the laid-off worker, the single mother, the musician bored with his job, the curious seamstress. All of them started with less capital than a luxury dinner party. They never intended to become bosses, nor did they harbor dreams of building a corporation. But somehow, it was that very serendipity, that collision with difficulty, that opened a door for them, an opportunity to create a small job, providing a livable income, and, more importantly, restoring their freedom. What excites me about writing these pages is not proving that everyone can get rich, but highlighting a frequently overlooked truth. We already possess the skills, perspectives, and habits that can be transformed into value for others. We only need to dare to ask, is anyone willing to pay for what I know how to do, what I love, what I have right now? In the process of surveying over 1,500 cases, I noticed an interesting recurring pattern. Most successful people don't create long-term plans. They act first and refine gradually. They don't sit down to calculate what their revenue will be in 5 years. They try, they fail, and then they adjust. The paradox is that this very lack of perfection is what allows them to go further, faster than those who are preoccupied with waiting for ideal conditions. If you open this book expecting to find a set of formulas, you will be disappointed. There's no detailed map here, only compasses pointing the way. I don't promise that everyone can turn $100 into a brilliant career, but I show you the people who actually did it with evidence, numbers, and calluses on their hands. And that is enough to reconsider the question. If they did it, why can't you? Perhaps you are already standing on the ground where you can plant the seed, you just haven't bent down yet. You once thought that to change your life, you had to leave everything behind. But what if the conditions are actually available in your drawer, in your hands, in your small daily experiences? I want to invite you to step into this adventure with a different mindset, not waiting for one grand leap, but seeking small yet resolute steps. And in each story, I will illuminate for you where passion and need converge, where a small bottleneck can open up a large flow, and where failure turns out to be a stepping stone. Before turning the page, try to pause for a moment. What skill are you holding on to? Even if it's small, could it make someone else excited enough to pay for it? Have you ever thought about trying to sell it just once to see the reaction? Before entering the book review section, we encourage you to buy and read the book to fully appreciate the content. Only by reading this entire book can you deeply understand the issues I am talking about. Please buy the book and support the author. Now let's begin the review of this book. That morning, Michael Hanna put on the suit he had worn for 25 years in sales. The bright tie, the polished shoes, everything seemed to signal a normal workday. He walked into his Portland office, opened emails, made a few calls, and prepared for a client meeting until a letter from his supervisor appeared, requesting him to meet immediately that afternoon. That conversation ended faster than any contract Michael had ever signed. In the blink of an eye, his entire career was packed into a cardboard box, and he walked out into the daylight with a feeling of emptiness. Days of unemployment followed. Then the unemployment check arrived. He was not incompetent, but the world was full of equally good candidates then. Michael could not find any position at his level. A friend unexpectedly suggested, "You can sell this lot of leftover mattresses on Craigslist. Surely someone will buy them." The idea sounded bizarre, but when all doors closed, a small crack also became an escape route. Michael called his wife. "I want to buy the whole lot of mattresses. What do you think?" There was no business plan, no experience in the industry. But there was one powerful thing he believed in: experimentation. He rented an empty car showroom, piled up the mattresses, and advertised them online. The unexpected happened. The items sold out quickly. Customers came not just to buy mattresses but also to chat with the salesperson, unlike any store they had known. Michael did not pressure them, did not push customers into buy now or miss out tactics. He just let them decide for themselves. That simple difference created the appeal. From the first attempt, Michael transformed himself. He learned about mattresses, worked with a local supplier, and kept the old display space. The store began to be known not only for its friendliness, but also for a crazy idea: delivering mattresses by bicycle. A friend built a tandem bike with a frame that could carry a large-sized mattress. Customers who rode their own bikes to buy a mattress would get free delivery. The idea quickly spread, becoming a story that was videoed and shared everywhere. 2 years after losing his job, Michael looked at the suit in his closet. He had not touched it once. The jacket that once symbolized professionalism was now a relic of a former life. He loaded it onto his car and drove it to Goodwill, then returned to the store. Amidst the mattresses and the laughter of customers, he knew he had just stepped into a different life. Lighter and more authentic. At the same time, in another corner of Portland, Sarah Young opened a small yarn shop. Outsiders looked on and considered it reckless to open a store during an economic downturn. But Sarah understood that she was starting not from a lack of resources, but from a personal experience. She was a customer who had searched everywhere for the type of yarn she loved, but could not find it. So why not create the shop that she had always been looking for? Sarah didn't call it a startup. For her, it was simply establishing a space for her passion. The difference, however, was that her first customers came not only to buy yarn, but also to find a sense of community. In just 6 months, the yarn shop was profitable. From that, Sarah realized that the experience of being a customer is sometimes more valuable than a business degree. The stories of Michael and Sarah are not exceptions. On another continent, Susanna Conway began teaching online photography classes. Initially, just for fun. She was surprised to find that the income from the classes was higher than her journalism career. Meanwhile, Benny, an Irish engineer, quit his field of study to wander the world, teaching others to learn languages quickly. And for him, it was not a business, but an endless joy. These people didn't embark with the intention of becoming entrepreneurs. They simply did something meaningful to themselves, and then realized it also held value for others. None of them prepared multi-page business plans. Many didn't even know what to call their work. But they all shared one outcome. They created their own income while regaining their freedom. In this world, no one waits at an official starting line. Each person accidentally stumbles upon an idea and then learns to hold on to it. Surprise becomes the catalyst, turning a detour into a long road. And from there, the concept of the accidental entrepreneur was born. People who never thought they would be their own boss, but found a more fulfilling life by daring to try one small thing. Story continues with many different pieces, seemingly fragmented but all pointing in one direction. When an individual listens to their own life needs, they inadvertently create a business path. Sarah with her yarn shop is one example. But in many other places, the beginnings were even smaller. Susanna Conway in the UK initially taught photography just as a hobby. She didn't budget or think about revenue sheets. But when the first online class brought in income that far exceeded her journalism job, Susanna realized that her own curiosity could become a self-sustaining career. What surprised her was not just the money, but the feeling of earning a living from what she loved and seeing others benefit from it. Similarly, Benny Lewis, an Irish engineer, graduated from university but abandoned his specialization. He traveled everywhere, calling himself a language hacker, sharing quick learning methods with anyone interested. For him, this was not business but a way of life. The interesting thing is that people who were listening to him were willing to pay to learn. The name didn't matter. The result was what redefined his life, a free, energetic, and unconstrained profession. Megan in Nebraska started by making handmade wedding dresses and accessories. Instead of paid advertising, she chose to give away many things for free: materials, sharing sessions, and detailed email replies. That very act of giving created a community of customers willing to buy any product she offered. Megan called it a strategic marketing plan through gifting. It wasn't based on gimmicks, but on the belief that generosity could become a business engine. If you look closely, these beginnings have a few things in common. None of them started with a large amount of capital. Many had only a few $100s or less. What they did have was a skill. Sometimes it was not a highly specialized skill, but something that could be transferred to a new field. Sarah was a discerning customer. Susanna was a photography enthusiast. Benny was passionate about language. Megan was skillful with her hands. They transformed these things into value for others to understand better. I conducted a survey on 1,500 similar cases. The results were filtered based on several criteria. First, the startup cost had to be low, mostly under $1,000, with many cases even under $100. Next, the job had to generate at least $50,000 a year, equivalent to the average income of an adult in North America. The majority of these businesses didn't have many employees, usually just one person or fewer than 5. The skills required were not overly specific and could be learned in a short time. And importantly, the participants had to be willing to disclose financial figures, income, costs, and profit. From this data, a picture emerged: no need for capital raising, no need for complex plans, and no need for a large team. The participants were all ordinary individuals. Many had lost their jobs, and many started only in middle age. What pushed them forward was not the desire to get rich at any cost, but the urge to create a different path for themselves. There are stories that sound like paradoxes. A person who worked in a large advertising agency in London quit due to boredom and illness, then opened a small design company to live life on his or her own terms. A young mother in Massachusetts, after her husband was laid off, turned her accounting hobby into a source of family income. A man in Colorado who managed a data center decided to drive down to South Carolina to open a coffee shop, simply because in one moment, he realized that was what he wanted to do. All these cases point to a key takeaway. You don't have to be a genius to start a business. Most of them didn't study business in school. Many even dropped out. What they had was determination and the ability to experiment quickly. They didn't ask anyone for permission, nor did they wait for approval. They simply tried something, observed the customer reaction, and adjusted. Often, unemployment, loss, or personal crisis became the biggest impetus. Those events opened up avenues they had never considered before. It was precisely in that unexpected situation that a free, meaningful life was formed. When observing all the fragments of these stories, a common denominator gradually emerges. Not everyone succeeds immediately, and not every passion generates profit. The factor that distinguishes a hobby from a sustainable job is the intersection where personal enjoyment meets the practical needs of others. I call this the convergence point. Imagine 2 circles. One circle represents what you love or are good at. The other circle represents what others truly need and are willing to pay for. Where the 2 circles touch, the overlapping area is the fertile ground for a sustainable business. Pure passion is not enough. I may be completely obsessed with pizza, but no one will pay me just to eat it. And what the market needs, if you don't have some interest or ability, is also difficult to maintain long-term. Success only flourishes in that intersection. Jenna is a clear example. She is passionate about cooking, especially Asian cuisine. Starting with only $200 in capital, she began sharing recipes through a website. The surprise was that her recipes were not only delicious but also simple and easy for busy families to apply. Hundreds of thousands of readers followed. And from there, invitations for book writing, television shows, and brand sponsorships came one after another. Jenna was not simply cooking for enjoyment. She had found the convergence point between her passion and the desire of others. Eating well without spending much time. Another case is Brandon Puggs, a piano teacher. He loved music but struggled with managing students, schedules, and tuition fees. While seeking a solution, Brandon used his basic programming knowledge to write management software. Initially, he only wanted to save himself, but then other teachers became interested and asked to buy it. From earning a few extra dollars, he gradually built a product that brings in over $30,000 per month. A personal hobby turned into a large income because he recognized the convergence point, combining music teaching with technical skills to solve a common problem. Besides convergence, there is another factor that many people often overlook: skill transference. Sometimes what you use to start is not the apparent skill, but the underlying secondary skill. A teacher does not just know how to teach. They also know how to coordinate, communicate, and encourage different groups of people to cooperate. Those skills can be transferred to other fields, becoming the foundation of a completely new job. Look at Kat Adley's story. Initially, she was just a waitress, known for her ability to please customers and always receiving generous tips. Someone told her she would be suited for the public relations industry. Kat did not know what PR was, but after losing her job at a restaurant, she recalled that comment. She tried finding clients, learned gradually in the process, and just 4 years later was running a company operating in many major cities around the world. From a waitress, she transformed into a communication expert. Not because of an overabundance of initial skill, but because she knew how to transform it into another form. Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip, once described it brilliantly. He was not excellent in any single area, but combined several average skills: drawing well enough, writing well enough, a bit of business acumen, and an average sense of humor. Combined, they created a unique product. The value lies in the combination, not in single brilliance. From the two factors above, the final formula becomes clear: skill, passion plus market need equals success. It sounds simple, but that very simplicity is the key. You don't need to think of a grand idea. Just look at what you already have and ask, do other people need this? If so, they will be willing to pay. Many other examples illustrate that formula. A culinary artist sharing family recipes becomes a famous TV host. A teacher writes software to serve himself and then expands it to the international market. A travel enthusiast creates a course instructing people on how to buy cheap tickets, and from an initial failure, refines it into a product that attracts thousands of customers. All demonstrate one thing: success does not necessarily have to originate from a genius idea. It often sprouts from very ordinary things. As long as you know how to spot the convergence point, transfer skills, and apply the formula combining them with usefulness. In the first steps. No one avoids mistakes, and sometimes the stumbles reveal the right path. I once had a project called Travel Ninja, a detailed guide explaining how to buy round-the-world airplane tickets, exploiting airline system errors, and how to accumulate reward points to fly almost for free. When I sought opinions, many people expressed interest. I thought I had success guaranteed, but when the product launched, only 100 copies were sold, much fewer than expected. Buyers praised it, but the number was too small to sustain. I was confused for weeks until I realized the truth. Customers did not want to delve deep into the complicated airline system. They only wanted one thing: cheap tickets. I had dragged them into the kitchen, while they only wanted to sit down and eat the ready-made meal. A year later, I returned with a different product, Flymaster. This time I simplified it and was direct. I will show you how to have an almost free trip. You just need to follow, no cumbersome details, no complicating the problem. The result was 500 copies sold on the first day. From the failure of Travel Ninja, I learned that you should not always teach people to fish. Sometimes it is better to hand them the fish they crave. That story later continued with travel hacking courses, a service that directly sends cheap flight opportunities to customers. The message is, you don't need to think, just follow the instructions. Over 3,000 people signed up on the first day. I didn't change the airline world, but I changed the presentation, the way I packaged the benefit to match the customer's desire. From these experiences, one truth is confirmed. People rarely buy what you think they need. They only buy what they want. And wanting is not always synonymous with reason. It is often simple, direct, and sometimes contradicts logic. The mission of an entrepreneur is not to educate the customer, but to listen and provide a suitable solution. On that journey, I met many people who faced failure on day one. An artist in Chicago launched a new service. In just one day, she gained 2,000 customers, and the system collapsed. A travel company heard that the island they were about to take customers to suddenly closed. An art studio's roof collapsed due to a snowstorm right during an exhibition. But they did not stop at the disaster. They found ways to fix, adjust, and turn the incidents into the foundation for later success. When distilling those experiences, I realized that the nature of small business is not about having a perfect plan. You only need 3 elements: a specific product or service, a group of people willing to pay, and a way to receive payment. Everything else is optional. Many people are busy drafting long business plans that no customer will ever read. Conversely, those who immediately take action, test sales, and adjust based on feedback are the ones who advance fastest. That is why I often repeat what seems like a paradox. Starting a business is less risky than being an employee. A stable job can vanish after just one meeting. But when you create value for others, you hold a source of income that no one can fire you from. Failure can happen, but can always be regenerated. Meanwhile, losing a job within a large system often has no way back. Freedom and value are 2 parallel threads. You seek freedom for yourself by creating value for others. You don't need much capital, no need for permission, no need to wait. You just need to start right where you are with what you already have. Act first, perfect later. Because theory will never answer what only practice can reveal. I always started with a doubt. Is it necessary to write a business plan dozens of pages long to start? The answer gradually became clear after observing those who came before. All those who succeeded didn't waste time on thick stacks of paper, which only kept them busy at their desk but far from reality. They chose a different path, condensing the entire idea down to exactly 1 page, even a single sentence. If a statement exceeds the necessary number of words, it is no longer guidance but showmanship. When you peel back layers of words, only the essentials remain. What are you offering in exchange? Who will pay? And how do you get paid? These 3 fragments combined already form a plan. No need for more, no need for circumlocution, I remember. The evening I met a man who had just launched a mobile car repair service. He sat in front of me, his hands still oily, and said, "I have an old truck, I know how to fix things. Customers do not have time to go to the garage, so I come to them. They pay cash or transfer immediately when the job is done, and that is it." His business plan was summarized in a few sentences, not 1 word more. And he has been living well ever since. The importance of simplification is not about being concise for aesthetics, but about forcing us to face the core. It is like a mirror reflecting the honesty of the idea. If you can't explain it in 1 sentence, it means you don't truly understand what you are doing. And once you understand, the subsequent decisions become clear. You will immediately know what is essential and what is just an accessory. Many people are accustomed to the thought process. To start a business, you must write a thick plan, take out a bank loan, and wait for approval. But in reality, not a single customer cares about those pages of paper. They only want to know if you can help them with something and how much they need to pay. Therefore, instead of diligently drafting, write your own business plan in one evening, concise enough to fit in your shirt pocket. When I embarked on my first job, it was the same. I listed, the product is imported coffee. The customers are people who love drinking good coffee. The payment method is online. Done, nothing else. There were no growth charts, no 5-year forecasts. It was all just 3 fragments, enough for me to know what to do the next day. And from that next day, the work started moving. I sold a few packages and earned enough money to cover expenses. The simplification prevented me from being paralyzed by unrealistic forecasts. I had to immediately face reality. Did anyone buy or not? If yes, I continued. If no, I changed. That process was essentially a cycle of learning, acting, testing, adjusting, and repeating. If you still think you need more details, ask yourself, will those details make someone take out their wallet faster? Will they help you provide clearer value? If the answer is no, boldly cross them out. This very action liberates you from the fog and brings you closer to the customer. I once met a woman who opened a private yoga class in Washington. When asked about her plan, she just smiled. I teach busy women. They need tranquility. I go to their homes or offices. They pay me directly. That was all, a few brief lines, but enough for her to build a more stable income than many people in the legal profession, her former career. The paradox lies here. Simplicity brings strength. In a world full of charts and spreadsheets, the courage to cut away and only keep the core is a competitive advantage. A short business plan is not a sign of sloppiness, but proof that you understand what you are doing down to the root. And once you have that one-page plan in hand, you no longer have an excuse to procrastinate. No more, I need to research more, I need to prepare more, or I need to finalize more. You have enough to start. And starting is the most important thing when you have a concise plan. And wanting is not always synonymous with reason. It is often simple, direct, and sometimes contradicts logic. The mission of an entrepreneur is not to lecture customers, but to listen and provide a suitable solution. The next question is always, how do you make an offer compelling enough for listeners to be unable to refuse? Most people I meet stumble here. They have a good idea, but the packaging makes others confused or indifferent. What they lack is not knowledge, but the art of creating an irresistible offer. There is an image I often refer to. During a marathon, the person serving orange slices at mile 18 will be more appealing than the person serving donuts. Because in that moment, what the runner needs is a juicy orange slice, not sweet powdered sugar. It does not matter how much you like donuts. In that context, they are irrelevant. The offer is the same. The value must be timely, meet the exact need, and be immediately apparent. I once observed Tour Saver in Alaska. They print a thick booklet of discount vouchers selling for $100. At first glance, no one wants to spend money buying a stack of papers. But they skillfully turn it around. By using just one voucher, you save more than the money you spent. This means the customer can almost certainly not lose money. The benefit is so obvious that it is difficult to refuse. When the value is presented so clearly, the transaction becomes instinctive rather than a thought process. I once made the mistake of trying to teach customers everything. I offered them the way to do it themselves, while what they craved was the finished result. It is like going to a restaurant. No one wants to be dragged into the kitchen to learn how to cook risotto. They just want a good bowl of food to eat. The important thing is not what you can do, but what others are willing to pay for. From that experience, I concluded that most customers don't want to learn how to fish. They want the fish on the table right away. The confusion between helping people learn and helping people achieve results has slowed down the progress of many people. I shifted from teaching details to delivering immediate benefits. I saw a clear difference. One of the formulas I always apply is specific benefit/cost incurred. If this can't be proven immediately, the offer will be weak. But if it can be demonstrated, the listener will feel like they are getting a bargain, and the decision to buy is almost predetermined. No need for lengthy persuasion. They feel smart for agreeing. Many other examples reinforce this view. There are businesses that turn generosity into strategy, giving away many free materials and sharing sessions. Customers receive the benefit before paying, so when it is time to spend, they do not hesitate. That giving is the foundation for a loyal community, ready to support any subsequent product. What I learned is never to stop at just describing the product. What it does is not as important as how it makes people feel. A mattress is not just springs and fabric. It is peaceful sleep for the whole family. A private yoga session is not just exercises, but a rare moment of quiet for a busy woman. When you talk about true emotions and benefits, the offer naturally becomes difficult to refuse. The paradox is that many people think customers need more detailed information, but actually they need less. They want clarity, decisiveness, and simplicity. They buy not because they are overwhelmed by data, but because they feel the answer is right in front of them. And the seller's job is not to push, but to remove the fog and show them the clear path that leads us to the next step. When the offer is shaped, how do you bring it out to the world in a way that generates the greatest attention? Even if you are starting in a small room, there's a crucial moment that any entrepreneur must face when bringing an idea to life. It is not just about putting up a sign or sending an email. It is a launch, a statement that from today what you created is real and ready for others to experience. Remember a morning in the cramped room of a coffee shop, where a small group gathered to witness a new project being introduced. There were no sparklers, no tens of thousands of dollars in expense, but there was excitement and a feeling of witnessing a great moment. What I learned there is that you don't need Hollywood to create drama. You just need to turn the launch event into a story. Many people often delay this step. They think they must be perfectly prepared before announcing. But the truth is, launching early is the way to know what works. Like trying to fly a kite, a light breeze is enough to tell you if the kite will fly or not. Those launches, however small, are an opportunity to test real customer reaction and then adjust before it is too late. Often say don't think of a launch as a procedure. Think of it as a party. You invite others to attend. You tell the story of why you did this. You give them the chance to be the first to experience it. When you do that, you are not just selling a product. You are creating a memory, and that memory has a spread power stronger than any advertisement. But the launch is just the beginning. After that, you must learn a skill that many people fear: self-promotion. Most of us grew up with reservations, avoiding showing off. We think promotion means bragging or bothering people. But the reality is different. If you have something worthwhile, you have an obligation to let others know. There is a saying I often repeat: advertising is like sex, only the unsuccessful have to pay for it. It is not a denial of advertising, but an emphasis that there is another way, the way of natural spread. Instead of burning money on banners and signs, you can generate attention by giving away value, by telling stories, by creating personal relationships. This art has a simple name: hustling. But don't be mistaken. It is not about pushing or shoving. It is the ability to knock on the right doors, make a clever invitation, and turn every contact into a step closer to the community. I once saw a street vendor in Portland. Each time he interacted, he left an impression that made customers remember his name. Not because he was cheaper, but because he made people feel listened to. That is hustling. Hustling is also when you organize a free workshop, Not to hand out flyers, but to help someone solve a small problem. When they walk away, they do not just remember the lesson. They remember you as a source of solutions. And the next time they need something bigger, you are the first person they think of. Of course, hustling requires persistence. You cannot just show up once and disappear. You need to repeat, maintain presence, and constantly find ways to appear in the memories of others. The strange thing is, the more you do it, the less awkward you feel. It becomes a natural part of the job, like the breath of a living body. And once you get used to it, you realize that promotion is no longer something you have to do, but something you want to do. Because it is no longer about selling, but about connection. You build a community around your idea. And that community, over time, will become the most powerful engine driving everything forward. From having a concise plan to having a compelling offer. Then launching and spreading, the path gradually becomes clear. The next unavoidable step is the question everyone cares about. Where will the money come from, and how will it arrive? If you have reached this step, it means you have a clear idea, an offer that grabs attention, and a community beginning to form. But there is one persistent question. Where do you get the money to continue growing? This is where many people stumble, because they believe that starting means a big loan, a bank, or an investor. But in reality, there are many other paths, sometimes surprisingly simple. I met Shannon Oki, a small publisher. She needed capital to print more books, but instead of knocking on a bank's door, she turned to a new platform, Kickstarter. She set a goal of $5,000, filmed a short video explaining the project, and offered a few reward tiers for backers. The result exceeded expectations. In just 20 days, she raised over $12,000. This amount was enough to produce and expand. And she gained hundreds of first readers, people who not only contributed money, but were also willing to recommend the book to friends. Shannon realized that crowdfunding not only brings in money, but it is also a way to turn customers into allies. Then I heard the story of Amy and Bruce Morton. They needed $17,000 to launch an HR service, but could not secure a conventional loan. So they borrowed using a different route, a car loan. The bank approved it more easily because a specific vehicle could be used as collateral. In reality, the money was poured directly into the business. Just 10 months later, the entire loan was repaid from revenue, and the business was established. Sometimes creativity is not in the product, but in the method of finding capital. In another city, rock climbing enthusiasts wanted to open an indoor gym. Instead of asking investors, they turned to their own community. They issued special CDs, not music discs, but certificates of deposit with interest rates higher than the bank. Friends and club members participated, seeing it as an investment that was both safe and meaningful. A few years later, the gym was operating stably, and the profit was enough to pay interest to the contributors. The lesson here is clear. The community is not just customers. They can also be sponsors. What I observe through these examples is that capital has never been an absolute barrier. The main limitation lies in the mindset. Many people assume they need a lot of money to start, so they never begin. But if you are willing to experiment, you will see paths open up. An online campaign, a short-term loan, support from the very people who believe in you. And sometimes you do not even need external capital, because when the start is compact enough, revolving profit is the best source of funds. You sell a few products, use the profit to make more, and gradually move forward. This model is not attractive to investors, but gives you absolute freedom. No debt, no shareholder pressure, no obligation to grow at all costs. In all the cases I studied, there's one commonality. Successful people do not wait for perfect conditions. They start with the money they have or find a way to raise just enough for the first step. Then from there, they cycle, they expand, they create. The important thing is not how much money you have, but that you dare to start and dare to let the work prove its own value. So the journey of bringing an idea to life has fully emerged. A simplified plan. A clear offer, a dramatic launch, natural spreading through hustling. And finally, creative ways to find capital. When those 5 pieces come together, a small but powerful business is ready to move forward, to go further. Sometimes we don't need a spectacular transformation, but just gentle shifts in the right places during our journey. I have witnessed many people diligently pursuing an imagined breakthrough, while true success comes from small but precise adjustments. Like subtly turning a tuning knob on a piano, the entire sound changes. I met a craft vendor. Initially, she priced her products out of habit, adding up the raw material cost and a little profit. Revenue stagnated. One day she tried packaging 3 items into a collection, setting the price twice as high. Strangely, customers preferred to buy the complete set. She did not need to open another store. She did not need to hire more people. Just by changing the presentation and pricing, her revenue jumped. I clearly saw that what she adjusted was not just the price, but how customers perceived the value. Another person made online music teaching software. He realized students often quit midway. Instead of trying to sell new courses, he added a feature for reminders and progress tracking. The completion rate increased sharply. Students were happier and more willing to buy the next course. Sometimes just a small feature solves a seemingly large problem, unlocking new revenue streams. We tend to think that growth requires more staff, more branches, and more costs. But through hundreds of conversations, I realized the key lies in refinement. What makes customers hesitate? What makes them leave halfway? The answer rarely lies in distant strategies, but in a seemingly trivial detail: the wording on a button, the product packaging, or the speed of email response. I recall my own experience trying to sell the first travel product. The bitter failure forced me to dissect every detail. I did not change the entire idea. I only changed the way the benefit was presented. From forcing customers to learn a series of technical tips, I packaged it into a service that delivered the result immediately. This small change was enough to make a difference. The number of buyers increased 5-fold. What I learned is that profit does not lie in projected curves, but in every small friction point between you and the customer. Find that friction, lubricate it with a skillful adjustment, and the flow will be smooth. It is the persistence in dissecting and micro-optimizing that creates the macro leap. The problem is that most of us lack patience. We want a flashy shortcut, a golden idea to rescue us. But sustainable people take a different path. They view their work as a continuous experiment. Today change the price, tomorrow change the packaging, the day after try a different distribution channel. Each experiment is like turning a screw. Sometimes nothing changes. But sometimes you hear a click and the whole machine runs smoother. A friend of mine sells handmade jewelry. She was stuck with her revenue. Then one day she simply added a free gift option for orders over $50. Customers started buying more to reach the threshold. There is nothing mystical. It is just a refinement. But it was enough to unblock the bottleneck. I don't advise you to be so obsessed with optimization that you forget the big picture. But if you want to move up a level, look for the details that seem mundane. Because in the real world, they determine whether you earn a few $1,000s or a few $100,000 a year. From those small adjustments, a principle emerges. Constantly experiment, measure, and scale what works. Don't claim anything before you have real feedback. Let customers guide you through their behavior. A great opportunity is always hidden in those small signs. I was once obsessed with the question, how do you scale without losing the soul of the work? When everything relies entirely on one person's hands and mind, the limit is already there. You can be more diligent, work longer hours, but there will come a time when there is no more room for growth. The secret is not to exhaust yourself, but to learn how to clone yourself. Cloning here does not mean creating a soulless copy. It is the act of separating the core value from your person and then turning it into a repeatable structure. To do that, I have to ask myself, what in this job is both valuable enough and easy enough to communicate? Because not everything is worth systemizing. A clear example: there are skills you are excellent at, but are difficult to teach to others in a reasonable amount of time. If you keep trying, you will burn out, and the system will not work. Conversely, some things are easy to teach but do not create much value. Scaling is useless. The sweet spot is at the intersection, what is both valuable and teachable. Finding this intersection is when you can truly project the work outside yourself. I met an interior design consultant. Initially, every project had to go through her. As customers grew, she started drowning in chaos. Then she split the process into two parts. One part was the preparation phase, including color palettes and basic material samples. This part was standardized into documentation that other staff could handle. The creative inspiration part she kept for herself. The result was that she served more customers without losing her personal touch. Many people fear that systemization will kill freedom, but the truth is the opposite. When you know what can be delegated, you free yourself from repetitive tasks. Freedom comes from no longer being confined to every trivial detail. That is when you have time to think about the long-term direction. Of course, there is a paradox. If you build everything just to sell it, you will choose radical standardization, turning the job into a self-operating machine. But if you build to live freely, you will retain the flexible part, the part that makes this job uniquely yours. Both directions are right, depending on the goal. I have met successful people who sold their entire business to move into new fields. I have also met others who are happy keeping a moderate job, not too big, but enough to live fully. The question is not whether to scale or not, but how far to scale to fit the life you want to live. Cloning yourself is not to become a slave to a bigger machine, but to create breathing room for yourself. In that breathing room, you can see clearly what is worth keeping and what should be delegated to others. When I started writing and sharing, initially I answered every response email myself. Then the number grew into the thousands. I was forced to choose. I established a general reply framework for recurring questions so others in the team could help me. But for letters containing deeply personal stories, I still responded directly. This division keeps the work both efficient and maintains a genuine human touch. This kind of cloning requires the courage to let go of some control. But if you do not let go, you will be stuck. Only by daring to let others carry a part can you truly move forward. And when you look back, you will realize that what you kept, though smaller, is the essence. From the moment you find the intersection of teachable and valuable, the path ahead becomes less constrained. You can go further without using more effort. And that is the true meaning of cloning yourself. Once freed from the loop of doing everything yourself, the next question always rings out: how far should I go? Some believe there is only one answer: the bigger, the better. But in reality, I have seen many different paths, each with its own logic. Some decide to keep everything very small. They are not interested in large offices, numerous staff, or millions in revenue. They only want a job that sufficiently supports themselves and their family, returning the right to decide their own time. At that small scale, every customer becomes a real relationship, not just a number on a spreadsheet. The freedom they gain comes from daring to refuse expansion opportunities that others crave. Conversely, some choose to magnify. They build factories, expand chains, and clone the idea everywhere. They find excitement in the process of growth, in the sense of conquest. For them, every step forward is proof of their ability to reach. But with it comes heavy responsibility, managing teams, worrying about cash flow, and facing constant pressure. For them, freedom comes from the ability to turn a small idea into a large footprint. And there is a third path, neither too small nor too big, but stopping at a sufficient level. Some open a store, maintaining a few employees enough for stable revenue, but not exceeding their capacity. This choice does not bring glamour, but it offers balance. You can live comfortably, have a close-knit community, and still retain control without being swallowed by the machine. Among these three choices, no path is absolutely right or wrong. The only thing that needs to be clear is what you want from this work. If the goal is wealth and prominence, go all the way. If the goal is peace of mind, keep it small. If you want both in moderation, choose the middle ground. The paradox here is that the sooner you determine the scale you want, the easier it is to achieve freedom. Conversely, if you only chase external pressure, you will lose the very thing you are looking for. I once went through a period of being caught in the vortex of expansion. Everyone advised me to hire more people, take on more projects, and open new markets. But the more I inflated, the further I strayed from what initially excited me. Only when I paused and asked myself, what size do I want for this life to be worthwhile, did I rediscover the rhythm. I realized I did not have to play someone else's game. I just needed to design my own game. The decision on scale is also related to how we use our time. Many people are consumed by their work. They spend all their time on internal matters, replying to emails, troubleshooting, and chasing problems. But sustainable people know how to spend time on the business, looking at the big picture, finding areas for improvement, and thinking about the long-term direction. It is this distinction that allows the business to grow without consuming its owner. And so, the step is not just growth, but choice. Choose the small, the large, or the middle. Choose how to define freedom for yourself. Choose to live by your own measure, instead of borrowing someone else's dream. But no matter which path is chosen, one question still haunts many. What if I fail? And if the worst happens, is there a way back for me? I still remember the winter morning when an art studio in the north had to close urgently. The roof could not bear the weight of the snow and collapsed. The entire exhibition turned into a pile of rubble. Months of preparation vanished in a few seconds. The studio owner could have broken down, but they chose a different way, moving the exhibition to an old warehouse, setting up temporary partitions, and using car headlights to illuminate the paintings. Customers still came, perhaps more than expected, because they were curious to witness that resilience. A travel company once booked a trip to explore a distant island for their customers. On the departure day, local authorities announced the island was closed indefinitely. The whole team was stunned. All schedules, all advertising costs were ruined. But they did not hide it. They called each customer directly, honestly admitted the fault, and proposed a new plan, switching to a different itinerary with no less excitement. Most customers not only agreed, but were grateful because they felt respected. Notably, many later returned to book more services. The initial failure, it turned out, became the foundation for long-term trust. Once an online platform was unexpectedly overwhelmed with 2,000 orders in a single day. The system could not handle it and completely froze. Customers were angry and complaint emails flooded in. In that situation, the founders stayed up all night writing apologies to each person, accompanied by a promise of a refund or complimentary extra services. Many customers did not leave but continued to support them because they saw the sincerity in the reaction. The crisis that seemed ready to sink them ultimately turned into material for improving the infrastructure and bonding the community. What I learned from those stories: failure is not an end punctuation. It is data, a map pointing out weaknesses that were not yet apparent. If you observe calmly, you will see them as mirrors reflecting what needs to change to get through those dark days. There are a few principles I always uphold. First, be honest with reality. Don't sugarcoat, don't avoid it. Hiding only leads to a loss of trust. Next, communicate transparently with customers. Because in times of instability, silence is scarier than bad news. Finally, pivot quickly. If the old road is broken, don't try to patch it. Find a detour. Acting fast not only saves the business, but also preserves your own spirit. And most importantly, create a buffer zone. Never put all your hopes into one scenario. Have a backup plan B and plan C, because when a crisis happens, it will happen. The buffer zone is what keeps you standing firm. The paradox here is that sometimes, failure is the leap that success cannot provide. Without a mishap, you might continue to go in the wrong direction unknowingly. But when the fall comes, it forces you to look back, adjust, and often opens up an entirely new path. Looking back, I clearly see that the frightening thing is not failure, but the fear of trying because of the fear of failure. Because if you do not try, you have no data to learn from, no experience to advance. Well, if you dare to try, dare to fall, you have at least taken a step closer to where you want to be. So instead of avoiding it, treat failure as a companion. It is not gentle, but it is honest. It does not give you comfort, but gives you clear eyes. And with those eyes you will continue to walk more steadily, more wisely. If I have to encapsulate this journey in one image, I will choose the image of a person standing at a crossroads, empty-handed, pockets empty, but eyes shining with a thought: I can try. This book does not hand you a detailed map or a first-class ticket to step into a new world. It gives you a push, sometimes rough but strong enough to propel you from the starting line. The clearest lesson is not in the financial figures or sophisticated strategies. It lies in the simplification for starting. You only need 3 things: an idea clear enough, a person willing to pay, and a way to receive that payment. The rest can be adjusted gradually. And if you look closely, that is also the structure of any exchange in life. What do you have? Who needs it? And where will the two sides meet? Another lesson has a paradoxical tone. The smaller, the freer. When you do not carry a bulky machine on your shoulders, you can pivot quickly, experiment quickly, fail quickly, and get back up quickly. In a world that idolizes expansion, keeping the business small enough to continuously cycle is an advantage. Small does not mean weak but flexible. And flexibility, in many cases, is what helps you survive long term. There's another, more subtle layer of lessons. Customers do not buy a product. They buy a feeling: the juicy orange slice at mile 18, the coupon booklet in Alaska, the mattress delivered by bicycle. All are not just objects. They are answers to a specific need at the right time, in the right context. If you want to create value, look deeply into what the customer craves, not what you think they need. The distance between those two things can determine overall success or failure. But what I want to leave you with most is not a list of formulas, but a question. How do you truly want to live? Wealthy, resonant, expanding to the limit, or sufficient? Lean to keep yourself unhurried mornings and stress-free evenings. There is no universal answer. Some find happiness in continuous expansion. Others are happier keeping a small but meaningful business. The right one is the one that aligns with your heartbeat. I also want you to try asking yourself, if your current job collapsed tomorrow, would you dare to see that as an opportunity to try a different path? If you fail publicly in front of hundreds of people, would you dare to stand up and say, I will try again? Because failure, ultimately, is not a stain but the kind of fuel that helps us create. Every fall is just a new chapter, not the conclusion. So instead of seeking certainty, learn how to build yourself a buffer zone. A space safe enough to dare to try. Try the new, try the bold. Try the thing that makes you both scared and excited. Freedom does not come from avoiding risk, but from accepting it, moving with it, and using it to open up turns you never thought of. Now, as you fold these pages, I want to leave you with an invitation. Do not read and then put the book down and forget. Choose one small idea in your head, any idea, and bring it into life. No need for perfection, no need for meticulous preparation, just one small step. Because only by taking this step will you know if the road is real or not. And you, the person listening, will you dare to start right from where you are standing? Will you dare to try despite the fear so that one day you can look back and smile because you did not miss out? The answer, I can't speak for you, but I believe deep down you already have it. Thank you for listening. And now, goodbye and see you again.